Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com.
All right, thanks everyone for joining today's webinar. We will go ahead and get started. As always, this webinar is recorded, and both the slides and the recording will be sent to all attendees and also posted to our SlideShare and our YouTube channel. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to be talking about nonprofit cybersecurity readiness. So this is another one of our sessions on cybersecurity. That's been a very popular trend, and look forward to sharing a lot of really great content today. So before we get started, just wanted to go ahead and tell a little bit about Community IT. So we are a 100% employee-owned company, and we've had an exclusive focus on providing nonprofits with IT support to help them advance their mission through the effective use of technology since we were founded in 1993. In addition to having a focus on nonprofit technology, we've also been recognized by one of our industry publications, which is Channel Futures, and have been recognized as one of the top 501 MSPs in the U.S. And I've been was actually at recognition dinner for that last week in DC, and so it was great to be recognized, not only as a IT provider that focuses on nonprofits and understands the unique requirements that they have, but also, we can compete with, the big MSP players as well, and that's a recognition, I think, of the work that we've put in as a company. So a little bit about me. My name is Matt Eshleman. I am the Chief Technology Officer at Community IT. I have been around since 2000. I started as an intern and have worked my career at Community IT and held a range of positions. So I'm flying solo today, so please bear with me if you have questions or comments. We will get to them. I've got a couple polls to do as well, so hope to make this engaging and interactive. I appreciate any feedback along the way. We've had some good questions ahead of time, and I think we'll get to those as part of the content today. Please feel free to go ahead and chat things in. I'll try to make sure that we respond to those, or I respond to those as we go throughout the session. So again, we're going to be talking about nonprofit cybersecurity readiness. This has been a big topic in the news and a big focus, I think, of the IT sector in general over the past several years. Today, we're going to talk about the cybersecurity landscape. I think it's always good to ground ourselves in this discussion in terms of what's the operating environment that we are working in. We'll talk a little bit about Community IT and our specific approach to cybersecurity, and something that we found that works well. We'll talk about the threats that most organizations are facing, and kind of informed by that threat model. We'll talk about building a roadmap for implementing a cybersecurity program at your organization, and then finally wrap up with some discussion around how to engage your leadership to get it done. So this doesn't happen in a vacuum. So in terms of the cybersecurity landscape, I think it's important to understand that there are kind of persistent and ongoing brute force attacks on your digital identity, and that's something that is occurring, all the time. As soon as anything is connected to or available from the internet, so it doesn't matter who you are, the work that you do, the type of organization you are. If you've got something online, somebody else is trying to get into it. So, it's not necessarily about who you are or what you do. It's just if you have some online resources, somebody else is trying to get into them. I think it's also important and certainly something that we've noticed, that there's an increase in some pretty sophisticated spear phishing, and I'll go into define that a little bit more later on, but suffice to say that spear phishing uses maybe some unique knowledge about you or your organization in order to kind of get you to click on something or provide some information or access. We are starting to see more and more of these cases where organizations are targeted because of the work that they do. We focus in the nonprofit sector, policy and think tanks, so we've seen certainly a lot of pressure on organizations that are doing nuclear policy or foreign policy. Those tend to be very attract the attention of some foreign adversaries. I think organizations that work for on elections, good governance, I think those can also be a target. I think particularly as we get geared up for an election cycle in our own country, I think that those organizations will start to feel more pressure from outside entities in terms of trying to disrupt the work they do, or even kind of gather insight in terms of what the organizations are doing, maybe before things get published. And then another new thing we're seeing is that there are attacks targeting vendors. So last year, the U.S. CERT put out an alert for companies like us, managed service providers, saying that we are targets from advanced persistent threat actors because we have access to the networks of a lot of different organizations. And so there have been a number of recent attacks and cases where a managed service provider has gotten compromised through a number of different methods, and as a result, their clients have been impacted as well. So it's something we take very seriously. It's something that we're aware of. I think it's something, as either consumers of, or as maybe as MSPs yourself, need to take really seriously the protections that that we put in place so that we can protect not only our network, but the network of the people that we serve. And I mean, so there's a lot of downsides, a lot of negatives, but I think there are some positive areas as well. I think there's a lot of great new security tools to combat these new threat types. So I think it is a bit of an arms race on the vendor side, and the vendor space is extremely cluttered, and there's lots of different vendors with lots of crazy names that all say they do really amazing stuff. So it does take a bit to wade through that, but there are lots of great security tools that are available to to help combat all these new threats. And we're also starting to see, I think this trend started last year, but organizations are starting to be proactive to ask about where to start in improving their cybersecurity. So again, I think it's evidenced as by this webinar today. I think this is one of the sessions that has received the highest interest, and I think it's because there's an understanding by organizations that they need to take cybersecurity seriously. And so so I think we're starting to see the proactive push from clients, not just us talking to clients about cybersecurity, but organizations coming to us saying, hey, can you help us? We have these concerns. And we see that we clearly have a long way to go. N10 published a report last year on the state of cybersecurity nonprofits, and I think one of the big takeaway numbers there was about almost 70% of nonprofit organizations don't have an incident response plan. So I think while some progress has been made, clearly there's a lot more. There's a lot more to go. And then finally, I think a takeaway is that we see a lot of information communicated about these kind of big brand name breaches, Target, Home Depot, Equifax, all these big name ones. And so I think the numbers tend to just cause us to gloss over, and we think it's not going to happen to us, but there's emerging data about the cost to do a breach response for a small to mid-sized organization, and so I mean those direct costs are in the $140,000, $150,000 range, and that is real dollars. So that's a combination of paying an IT vendor to come in and do remediation, a combination of some lost staff time, maybe marketing communications for handling the response, and so that's not necessarily captured in impact to the goodwill, the branding of the organization, or lost productivity, but we're talking about for a small mid-sized organization having a direct cost of about $150,000 if they have to respond to a breach. So there is real money, and that could be a significant blow to an organization that has a budget of $4, $5, $6, $10 million. It's there's real money involved here. So in terms of how we approach cybersecurity, you may have seen this model before, and there's lots of great models out there. This is one way that we've chosen to look at it, but really understanding that there's multiple elements to a good cybersecurity program. We think that a successful one needs to be rooted in security policy. that forms a foundation that can help guide and inform the rest of the technology or process decisions. So rooting your organization's approach to cybersecurity in a security policy is a great way to start. Building on that, we want to make sure that our staff are informed and trained. And so I think this is one of the best areas that you get the most return on your investment in terms of a cybersecurity plan, or is to invest in staff security awareness training. It's something we do at Community IT. We've done it for a number of years now, and find that we get a lot of value out of doing training with our staff, and more and more so getting some more adoption around our clients in terms of doing security awareness training. Technology tools are great for prevention, but end users are even better in terms of having informed and trained staff can really cut down on the risk that your organization faces. Layered on top of that, there's a number of different elements that we have defined as identity, so your username and password, the data that you have as an organization, the devices that are used to access that data, the perimeter of the network. So again, if the perimeter can be a rather fluid concept, it can be your office network, you could have resources in the cloud, it could just be an individual, could be their own perimeter, but the perimeter is still an important concept from a security model perspective. And then also the web. So again, talk about websites, web applications that are in use by organizations. So a number of different kind of discrete usually technology solutions that require attention as well. And then we think about kind of a top layer of some next gen tools. I think maybe in a previous model we had described this as predictive intelligence. I'm choosing to rename this now as some next gen tools. I think reflecting some of the evolution in the space. There's a lot of great tools out there. A lot of jargon in them, but you can find some really effective solutions out there that can address some needs or security concerns that maybe kind of the traditional or the old way of responding to them is not going to be able to cope with. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of a poll here. Just want to get a sense for the audience here. How confident are you with your organization's cybersecurity approach? So again, just a little poll here. If you're very confident in your approach, maybe you're somewhat confident, hey, you're not at all, that's why you're here. That's great. So just leave that open for a little bit here. Get some feedback from the audience, and then we'll go ahead and display that so you can see what your peers are responding. All right. All right, so we can see that most, the plurality of folks are, kind of somewhat confident, followed by, folks that are not at all. So you're in the right place. I think education is key to kind of building that understanding. So, and for those of you that are very confident, I'd be happy to get some feedback or input from you in terms of what, the reasons why you find yourself in that position. So great. We got a couple more polls as we go on. So look out for those as we go along. So I think it's helpful to talk a little bit in terms of some definitions as well. Lots of terminology here. So we're going to be talking a little bit about security incidents. And an incident is simply an event that compromises the integrity, confidentiality, or availability of an information asset. So again, we see that concept of the CIA triad. So that's a threat to the organizations. We talk about security incidents, and then more seriously, we talk about security breaches. So that would be an incident that results in the confirmed disclosure, not just a potential exposure of data to an unauthorized party. So a security incident might be a computer had a virus that was identified and quarantined. So it'd be a security incident. We want to note it. That may help us shape or drive some of our decisions. But a breach could be we were infected with ransomware. So that means that we kind of lost control of access to our data. So that would be a breach. So we've got some confirmed penetration or compromise of the network. And so we took kind of those concepts. And earlier in the year, wrote, I think what was the first nonprofit cybersecurity incident report. So this was data that was generated from the organizations that we serve. So we work with about 100, and I think we're about up to 140 organizations, about 5,000 endpoints, and looking through the data that's submitted through our service tickets. We're doing event classification to kind of see what's the actual security incidents that are occurring at nonprofit organizations, and providing that as a resource for the community, so that we're making good decisions based on the actual threats that are faced by organizations like us. So let me go ahead, and I'm gonna chat out that link. So if you want to go, if you haven't already, but if you want to go ahead and download that report, you can go ahead, and here's the direct link. So let me know if you can download that report. And I'll talk about that a little bit, but just know that it's another resource from Community IT to help maybe inform and shape some of those decisions. So again, the Nonprofit Cybersecurity Incident Report, something that we worked on, and we are working on it again. We'll publish that probably in the first quarter of 2020. So the incidents that we see that are most common at the organizations that we serve, which again are kind of small to mid-sized nonprofit organizations, from 15 to 200 seats. That's kind of the core. Would be business email compromise. So again, that's more than just spam. Spam is just kind of unwanted email. Business email compromise and kind of spear phishing are kind of getting lumped into a category together, but that's a scam using what they call confidence schemes combined with email impersonation to get you to take action. Business email compromise could look like a spoofed email coming from your executive director asking you to buy gift cards. It could come in the form of, again, a spoofed email from your finance person asking you to update the wire transfer information for a vendor. It could come in the form of an email from a partner, again, asking you to update payment information to do some payments, or reset a password or something like that. So again, pretty focused, pretty sophisticated, and really hard for traditional spam solutions to prevent against. So again, we're seeing a big spike in business email compromise. There's a lot of good new tools to combat it, but again, that's something that we are seeing quite a lot of. Probably followed by account compromise. So again, that is whenever unauthorized use of a digital identity by someone other than the assigned user. That can be the result of some brute force attacks. It could be the result of a spear phishing attempt where somebody got a link to reset their password, except it wasn't the real link. It was just a spoof site that just did some credential harvesting. And we do see malware, and I'm just going to define this as just some malicious software. Maybe it's reported as a slow computer or a pop-up, a little bit different than what I would say a virus is. So we are still seeing reports of malware, but often it's, it is not, kind of actually malicious software that's installed on the computer. It could be some browser add-ins and some other distracting stuff, but maybe not a virus. So we are seeing that as continuing to be a bother or a nuisance for staff. So I am curious. We'll go ahead and do another poll here in terms of what incidents have you experienced at your organization, just to kind of get a sense from the audience here compared to what our sample size is. We're focused here in the DC metro area. Primarily for managed services support. But again, what are folks seeing in terms of the security incidents that their organizations are? And leave it open for just a little bit. And as I'm watching the results come in, I mean, I think it's not unsurprising. So we're seeing spear phishing be very common. I mean, I would expect maybe 100% of organizations are going to experience that. Followed by viruses, wire fraud. And I would say wire fraud has a very specific legal definition, so that's probably like the successful execution of some spear phishing. When money actually leaves the door, that's considered wire fraud. It's a federal offense. You can report it to the FBI. So according to the folks here, we've gotten a lot of a lot of spear phishing, a lot of incidents of account compromise, actually a good chunk of ransomware, which I think is interesting. We are going into our second year of the report, and we have not had ransomware incidents at the clients that we work with. I live in Baltimore. The city of Baltimore was basically taken out by ransomware for 6 weeks, maybe longer. Atlanta had issues, and so I think ransomware does seem to be making a trend, maybe nationally. And so I think it is something to certainly be aware of. So thanks for that information. It's really helpful to hear what's affecting folks. All right. So in terms of a year-over-year comparison, we're 8 months, 9 months into the year. When we look at the data that we have and compare it to what we saw in 2018, the reported volume of reported spam has increased pretty dramatically. I think that's a combination of probably some end user training. I don't know that spam is going up or down. It just seems to be all present. We are still seeing that the number of account compromises has been holding steady, even though we've been increasing the MFA adoption amongst our clients. That's one of the data points we'll look at and have in the final report for in 2020. But just we've once an organization can implement MFA, their risk of an account compromise falls very dramatically. But we've been making slow progress amongst our clients. I'd love it to be a universal, but we're getting there. So we are still seeing that account compromise are holding steady. About 12% of our client base, I think, has experienced that issue. Even though we're turning on MFA in more and more places, we're seeing a big spike in the business email compromise. So again, that's I think a new trend that we're seeing in 2019 is just the sophistication and efficacy of those business email compromise trends. Overall, we do see a really low virus infection rate. So lots of tickets get reported as, oh, my computer's slow or whatever. Once we get dig into it, it's often not a virus. So the actual virus infection rate is low, and the ransom in our sample is very low. So again, it's a serious threat. We take the device security of the clients that we support really seriously, and so we're doing a lot around Windows updates and third-party updates and BIOS level updates and driver updates and kind of the whole stack, so that we can prevent those vulnerabilities that ransomware writers use to exploit. So we're probably testing above average, but I think it is a serious threat that we want to continue to be aware of and defend against. So going into again the analysis of the data in our sector. I talked about it already, but I think the spear phishing and business email compromise is increasing. So if you're feeling flooded, no, you're not the only one. We are noting that supply chain attacks are really up dramatically, and I would define those as both being maybe from our clients, the organizations that they work with, kind of organization, B2B compromise. So, your organization has a user account compromise, then that's often pivoted into communicating with other organizations that are in your address book or in your network. So, you have a trusted partner. And so, we had a case where, that resulted in wire fraud for some significant financial loss. And then again, as an MSP, we are aware of the threats that we've faced as having access to a lot of networks, and so we've ramped up the security of the systems that we use, and there have been a number of reported cases where a managed service provider has been compromised, and then that's resulted in the networks of the clients that they work with being compromised, and so it's something that you need to be in conversation with your support providers about the security controls that they have in place. So again, it's not just your network, your security controls, but again, who are the people that have access to your network? What are the security controls that they have in place? And then again, I think on a bit of good news is that security awareness training adoption is increasing. So we are seeing that go up. It's really popular. I think it's easy to do, some good payback, and so I do see that as a trend that has started in 2019. So coming back to our model here, you know, there's some things that we can do, again, as a managed service provider to our clients' networks that don't require, kind of an organization to make any changes. So again, we can turn on backups, we can maybe do some device encryption, we can update the firewall, we can, put some security settings on a website, and that doesn't really require any end user change. So again, those are kind of identified as partner delivered tools. However, there are some things that are really hard for us to do on our own as an outside vendor. Even as in that trusted, provider role, we can't make you adopt your security awareness policy or your IT acceptable use. We can be a resource to help you think through that, write the policy, figure out what it means in your context, and give you some pointers, help you think through it. But fundamentally, that's a decision that the organization needs to own. So that's at the end of the day, the risk is owned by the organization, and so the security policy is gonna be driven from that. So again, I think it's really important for organizations to take on that ownership of their security policy, work with the resource to shape it, but the policy needs to be owned by the organization. And the same thing, the security awareness training really needs to be something that is identified as the organization as an important piece for what it means to to work there. And so security awareness training needs to be a core part of the organization. It's not an afterthought. It's not something IT is making us do. It's something that the organization is doing because they want to protect their resources, their data. And so security awareness training, again, is something that in the best of cases is involves the whole organization. It's a mandate that comes down from the top. Leadership is showing that it's important that they're participating in it, that they identify it as valuable, and it's something that they're encouraging or mandating because it helps improve the overall security and effectiveness of the organization. So again, I just wanted to kind of highlight that distinction as we see it in terms of the different places that ownership can take place of these various initiatives. There's some things that you can do all internally. There's some things you can do with a partner, and this is a breakdown that seems to make sense for us. So now we're going to be moving into, I think, the part of our discussion to talk about, okay, so we kind of know the environment that we're operating in. We have a security model. So now how do we put in place a plan that helps to actually make our organization more secure? So kind of following on the heels of the cybersecurity incident report, we also published a report on what we were calling the IT security playbook. So we had originally published this, I think, back in 2016 as kind of our inaugural one, and then did a pretty significant refresh and rewrite for 2019. So you can download that. I chatted that link over. And so the content that comes, kind of for the remainder of the presentation is really a representation of, our cybersecurity playbook, kind of what we follow, what we do, and how we think about technology and securing it. So you'll see, this kind of familiar framework here of people, process, and technology. I talked about it earlier, recognizing that the foundation of good cybersecurity is really rooted in policy. It's rooted in security awareness training. And so again, there are different elements, or there are elements in all these different areas that are important. So you can't, build a one-legged stool and have it be successful. So again, I think, on the people side, I think password policies, multi-factor authentication, I think those are all, kind of individual practices that people can take to improve the security of their accounts and their identities. On the process side, that's where I would lump things like policy and security awareness training. Your policy may extend to how you handle purchasing gift cards or making wire transfer payments. It's going to involve the finance department. These are not just things that are only driven by or only affect the IT department. And then recognizing that, there are a lot of technology tools in place to support these various security controls, but they're not the only ones. So again, this is just one representation acknowledging that there are the elements of people, process, and technology in terms of supporting a good cybersecurity program. And it's not just a bunch of technology stuff that IT is going to drop off and you just have to deal with. So in terms of what I would say, if you're getting started, these are really the fundamental pieces that need to be in place. If you're getting started, you don't have to have all these before you kind of go on to the next level. But if you are going to be making investments, I think it makes sense to start with these things. Because as we've seen in our research and the incidents that we are responding to, this is kind of where you get the most bang for your buck, right? So if you can write your IT policy and get that in place, then that can help inform some of the other decisions or identify some gaps that you maybe currently have. So I would say start with policy if you can. We have a policy template that we've taken from SANS, and that's a resource. Let me go ahead and just chat that link out. We have, edited it and evolved it, pretty significantly to reflect, the needs of nonprofit organizations. A lot of the cybersecurity resources are kind of built for enterprise first, and then maybe for government, and so it's not quite as great, I think, for nonprofits. I think there are starting to be more and more resources, and we certainly are hoping to publish and contribute to that. But start with good policy, then start with security awareness training. We use KnowBe4. That's the tool that we found. We've evaluated a ton of things. There's a lot of options out there, and kind of more and more every day. I do feel like KnowBe4 is probably the best option out there. And when you're doing security awareness training, I think it's important to have really good training as opposed to having mediocre training. So this is again one thing where you may want to spend some money on getting a really good security awareness training as opposed to whatever free thing the vendor is going to kind of tack on as an incentive. So really like security awareness training. And then there's some kind of fundamental IT stuff in here. As I mentioned earlier, we support about 5,000 endpoints, and we spend a lot of time on patching and updates. And it's not very glamorous, but it is essential. And so, most of these vulnerabilities that exist out there or that are exploiting, it's unpatched systems or unpatched applications. And so, keeping current with those updates is very important, and I think contributes to the relatively low incidence of ransomware and viruses that we experience in our managed environment, because we are focusing so much on updating the operating systems. If they're not being updated, we're getting reporting and we're getting alerting, and we have IT business managers that are working with clients, and we've got ticketing, and we're so make sure that if you're on your own, that you've got tools not only to manage the deployments, but also to report on the exceptions, because in security, it's really a game of fundamentals, and you got to have, the weakest link is going to get exploited. So it's just important to make sure that everything is covered, everything is included, because that weakest link will be exploited. Antivirus is on here as well. I think antivirus is getting, it's okay. I think it is table stakes. There are lots of next-gen tools that do a really fantastic job. Traditional antivirus is only catching 40%, but I guess it's better than it catching 0. So, antivirus is still on here as a required, kind of foundational element. Even though I think its days are relatively numbered, and I think with some of the new tools coming down the line, we'll want to be shifting our investments into some next-gen tools that I'll talk about for the mature enterprise stack. Backups are on here. I think a lot of organizations, backups are kind of out of sight, out of mind. And so I think especially as a lot of organizations have moved data to the cloud, we just kind of assume that cloud providers backing up the data. And it's a painful lesson to find out that they aren't, or they aren't doing it to what we expect. So again, backing up data, even if it's in Office 365, even if it's in G Suite, even if it's in whatever, Salesforce or whatever application you happen to have, having a copy of data in a format that you can manage, see, control, and restore is an absolutely critical piece of any cybersecurity plan. So backups are on here, they're foundational, and it's important that they're included in any plan. I've moved multi-factor authentication here as a required element. Office 365 makes it really easy to do, G Suite makes it really easy to do, and the research has shown that if you are using multi-factor authentication, ideally with an app, so again, the Microsoft Authenticator, the Google Authenticator, Duo, one of those tools, the risk from account compromise just plummets dramatically. It's 99% effective. Some places will allow you to do SMS or text messaging as multi-factor. If you can avoid it, do. But this is one, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. If there's a choice for a multi-factor and it only supports text messaging, you're better off doing that than not turning on multi-factor authentication at all. So again, multi-factor authentication is something that should be an absolute requirement for every organization, and the implementation is becoming a lot easier. I think in general, staff are more accustomed to it as they are required to do multi-factor authentication in more places themselves. And so, if you're an IT leader in your organization, it's something we've had, less pushback in terms of adoption, because of that. So again, multi-factor authentication is absolutely critical. And then finally, I added on here, and this I think is an actually newer evolution from our security playbook, but I would say business email compromise protection is, I would consider that part of the core cybersecurity plan. And the reason I say that is because that's one of the things that causes the most frustration and anger and misunderstanding among staff is seeing the tickets come in. Why did I get this email from my executive director, or why did this email spoof my address? Is my account compromised? This takes an enormous amount of time to review and respond and analyze. And so we have a whole process that we go through to make sure that to verify if an account has been compromised or if it has just been spoofed. And so new tools that are able to identify and remove and react to business email compromise attacks just reduce the overall number of tickets that get generated because of this. And as I mentioned before, these spoofed emails are usually crafted to steal passwords, to get somebody to update wire transfer information, to buy gift cards. And again, every organization is going to be vulnerable to these attacks. So it doesn't matter if you are a highly resourced think tank with huge budget, or if you're a community services based organization, you're going to be vulnerable. We had an organization be on the receiving end of these, and they provide services to people with developmental disabilities. One of their interns got this message, and all of a sudden they're out $800, and they're not any big target, but from kind of the other side of the computer, this is a financial operation, and those threat actors are just basically out to try to find ways for them to get money, and they don't necessarily care, or they're not being restrictive in terms of who they're targeting. And so it doesn't matter the size of your organization. If you have any financial resources at all, you're a target. And so it's important to understand the risks facing your organization. And maybe it does mean you need to invest in some security services to help prevent this. It's insurance, but again, this is an area where an ounce of prevention is certainly worth a pound of cure. And so if we can prevent these business email compromise attacks from happening, we're going to be a lot more. We'll be a lot happier. You're going to lower your stress level a lot by not having to deal with these things in the first place. All right. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to have folks chat them in. So there's a question here about their policy for backups. I don't know the specific kind of retention policy or backups in G Suite. I think for Office 365, I think there's like a 30-day retention period. So in any case, that's why I recommend a third-party backup tool to get the data out of the primary system so that you have access to it otherwise. There's a question about spoofing. And the answer is that there's lots of different ways to kind of help combat this. Way back, SPF records were intended to help combat email spoofing. That's involved now to DKIM and DMARC. Both are all of those are great solutions. We are implementing all of those. The problem is that they are not universally adopted, and so the pushback that we get is if you turn on SPF checks so that we're rejecting mail that doesn't have that configured correctly, or we're turning on DKIM DMARC checks, you're going to be rejecting about 30% of your mail, which is just not acceptable. So there are tools to help, but there are no silver bullets. So we find a combination of implementing SPF records, implementing DKIM, implementing DMARC, and then turning on a business email compromise tool. We use Barracuda Sentinel. It's fantastic. Is it cuts down probably 95% of the spoof messages. So that and security awareness training. Again, there's technology solutions to help prevent it, and then there's security awareness training to help equip your staff, your users, to kind of know and identify what to look for, so that if something gets through these technology solutions, which are not flawless, they're able, they're equipped to identify and respond. So great. All right. So moving on from kind of basics to those organizations, and I think we had a fair number of attendees here that were more mature. They felt confident in their plans. There are some additional things here that I would recommend for I've termed growing organization. There may be a better term for it, but I would certainly add in BIOS and driver updates. So again, at the beginning of last year, we saw the arrival of the Spectre Meltdown vulnerability. And that was a vulnerability that required not only an operating system update or a patch, but also an update to the underlying BIOS of a computer. So at Community IT, we were able to script and develop automated patching for BIOSes for Dell computers. So we are now doing that as part of our standard practice as a way to combat threats that are kind of beyond the operating system. So, for Dell, there's an automated process that we've developed using some of their tools. Other vendors have some different things that you can kind of build out and customize. But I would seriously take a look at that. I would say web filtering is another key element. So, threats are coming not only from, viruses and attachments and that kind of thing, but also in malicious web links. So again, for our core client base, we are doing web filtering. There's a number of vendors that out there that do it. We use Cisco's Umbrella as a way to block known malicious sites or command and control or botnet. So again, all the web traffic goes to those vendors' DNS servers. They get vetted, and if it's something that's going to a known malicious site, the content just gets blocked. So again, it's kind of this multi-layered approach. We want to have antivirus on the desktop. We want to block malicious traffic at the web layer as well. I'm adding in here BYOD control, or bring your own device control. I think this is an area where organizations are starting to appreciate maybe the risk that this represents to their organization. And we're kind of evolving from, hey, isn't this neat? I can get my work email on my phone, to, oh, wait, we have all of our staff with their personal devices that we have no control over, accessing work resources, all hours of the day, and we have no idea what's going on, or the security controls on their device, or what happens if they leave. And so I think organizations are starting to be more attentive to the risk that presents to the organization, and the need to put some security controls around that. And again, I think on the tool side, there's lots of good tools now that are, free or low cost, that can be used to control and manage the work portion of a personal phone. So again, you can put some controls on it so that you're managing access to work email, but you're not going to delete the pictures of their kids. And so, so I think BYOD, having some policies and controls around bring your own device, is an important thing for organizations um, to consider. And again, this is one thing where it kind of comes back to being rooted in policy. What is the organization policy around devices? And that may raise some questions. What happens if people don't have a work phone? What happens if you're asking them to install multi-factor authentication and they don't have a they don't have a smartphone, or what? So again, what are I think this is where policy, having that in place, can help answer some of these other questions that are going to get raised as you go down the road. Combined with BYOD control, we're also starting to see device encryption be deployed more and more. Again, the security tools are there to make it a lot easier to do. So Windows 10 and BitLocker, you can do that kind of natively out of the box. If you add in Intune through Microsoft's EMS platform, that can be free or low cost to enforce that. It can be transparent to the users if you're using some of the TPM chip technology. So again, but that just is an extra layer. Those of you that are require compliance, HIPAA compliance, this is something you're probably mandated to do. And so again, device encryption, I think, is an important thing. Again, if a device gets lost or stolen, if it has encryption on it, it is essentially a brick. So that is an important element of your overall security policy. I've added in a title here called Endpoint Detection and Response, and this is that next-gen tool that I was talking about, that's kind of beyond antivirus. So, there's some kind of startling stats about, about malware. It's polymorphic, it's unique. Signature-based detections don't work anymore. And a lot of the attacks are moving into what's called fileless attacks. So again, they're being executed in PowerShell or terminal. And so they aren't, kind of traditional viruses anymore. And so there's a number of next-gen security tools that are able to look at, the activity of a process or an application, and determine if that activity is malicious or not. So again, tools like CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, Sophos Intercept X, there's a number of solutions out there that are able to identify, block, report on things that maybe traditional antivirus does not get. Microsoft has their Defender ATP. I think that's actually free as part of the business Microsoft for Business 365, which they just announced was free for 10 users. So again, there's lots of new tools and techniques out there. It's something that it's probably going to be delivered through a partner, so that they can manage, support, tweak, report on. But again, I think spending money on some EDR is a really good use of your IT spend. You can really protect the devices themselves, and then there's some other tools in place to protect identity. And I would say finally, it's probably worth going through and doing a risk assessment. This is kind of the first time in this model where we've kind of talked about assessing, and I think it's on there late intentionally because I think most organizations have a lot of IT fundamentals to work on. It's good to get an assessment. I'll have a link to a free tool that I'm going to make available to everyone who's on the webinar today, so that you can have online access to our NIST security risk assessment tool. It's a survey-based tool, and you can go through, fill it out. It takes maybe a half an hour, and you get a report back that identifies the areas that, that need attention. So again, a great resource, and I'll show it a little bit later. But again, that can help. Once you've, if you don't have backups in place, if you don't have multi-factor in place, if you don't have an IT policy in place, if you don't have security awareness training, I mean, the assessment tool is just going to tell you to do all those things. So, maybe you need to do that to take the leadership. But if you, already have approval, do the fundamentals, then at least when you do the assessment, you've made a bunch of progress, and then, you've only got a couple more things to work on. All right. And for those organizations that maybe have got all this stuff already done, like what's next? What are the other things that you can do? I certainly think looking at cyber liability insurance is a important next step. Again, this kind of gets back into your policy and procedures. We had a webinar with Aon to talk about that. We couldn't record it, but I have some on our blog talk about that. The security assessment. So I'm going to distinguish a risk assessment, which is, in this context, is just a survey that you fill out. It's kind of a lot of self-reporting. But a security assessment actually is like a look under the hood. So again, a vendor or firm coming in to kind of actually check the settings, to poke around a little bit, to kind of see what's going on. That's going to be an important element to kind of test and vet that, how you have things set up are indeed accurate. The next set of initials, a SOC or a SIM, so a Security Operations Center or a SIM. So again, this is, I think, another area where there's a lot of great tools and vendors out there that can do event, monitoring and collection. And so, they're able to take events that are coming from your firewall and from your Office 365 login and your Salesforce login and your Okta login and your computer, your Defender ATP events, and kind of log and analyze and correlate, and then provide monitoring and reporting based on that. So it's really sophisticated stuff. Again, if you've got compliance requirements, that could be a good tool. Again, then we kind of get into vulnerability scanning, and then penetration testing. So again, a lot of people like to talk about penetration testing. I think it's great. I think you should spend your money on a bunch of other stuff before you do pen testing. But again, if you've already done all the fundamentals and you're really advanced, then pen testing is kind of the next thing that you could look at. So again, let me send a link. So this is the NIST security assessment tool that that I made reference to. I'm going to go ahead and chat out the link. If you email me, then I'll create an account for you, and then you'll have access to online. It will give you this heat map in the areas of identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And so you can see there, it's identifying that, you've got a critical error in that, you're not doing security training. You're not doing threat detection. So again, this is a great tool that if you go ahead and click on that link, or you can just email me, I will provide you with access to that tool. You can go through it yourself, and it will give you this report. You have online access to it. You can run the report, scan again, or you can fill out the survey again, and you'll see how your responses change over time. So now we got a good roadmap in place. Okay, so now what do we want to do? We need to talk to leadership. So again, as I mentioned earlier, all organizations are vulnerable. There's no such thing as being too small, not enough resources, whatever. Every organization is vulnerable, and so I think that's an important thing to set as kind of to ground the discussion. And again, poor cybersecurity is an organizational liability. There's direct costs that could be associated with remediation. There's costs associated with fraud. There could be business impact to your organizational goodwill. So again, that's an organizational liability to having poor cybersecurity, and it does require leadership to say yes. We've seen successful cybersecurity plans implemented, top down, meaning the board, has a mandate and they're saying this needs to happen, and it can kind of happen from the top down. But we've also seen cybersecurity programs be implemented from the bottom up. Somebody in IT, thinks or has identified this, they come up with a plan, they go up to leadership, and they get it approved. So it can be successful both ways. So there's not one size fits all in terms of adoption. I guess the only thing that is common is that leadership has to say yes. They have to be engaged. You can't have an effective cybersecurity plan without having that executive leadership approval. So how are some ways that you can do that? So I would say it's important to schedule time for security. And again, you may already have some time for this as part of your IT planning already, but again, schedule time for security. That could be monthly reporting on metrics, it could be some quarterly planning. That's kind of a rhythm that we go through with the organizations that we are engaged with. Again, know your audience. What's going to be the most impactful to them? Is it telling the narrative? Hey, we heard about this organization that's like us. They were a victim of wire fraud and they sent $150,000 to the wrong vendor and that's gone. Or do they want to see metrics and numbers? You can hand them our incident report saying, hey, 14% of nonprofit organizations are going to have an account compromise this year. We don't want to be in there. That's something that we need to address. So again, know your audience, tailor that communication. Probably don't get hung up on all the tools and applications you're going to buy to address it, but again, keep it high level with leadership. Talk about the business risk and how we're going to address that. And then finally, I would say leverage existing compliance requirements. I do think this is one area where, because most nonprofits do not have a formal compliance requirement, cybersecurity has kind of fallen by the wayside. We've moved to the cloud because it gives us a lot of capacity. It's cheap. We see the value, but cybersecurity puts guardrails on them. And unless we have to, we're not going to. So again, if you have existing compliance requirements, most organizations have some sort of PCI compliance because you're dealing with credit card payments. That could be an avenue to help bolster some investment in cybersecurity. HIPAA certainly is something that has a lot of cybersecurity compliance around it. And then GDPR, again, can be a way to help leverage that GDPR investment and pivot that into cybersecurity investment as well. So again, these are the links that I have been chatting out as we go along. So they'll be in the slide deck as well. So I've highlighted the SANS. I think they're a good resource for policy documents. I'll go ahead and chat out this link from Microsoft. Microsoft for Nonprofits has a number of great resources in terms of the tools and policies and techniques and stuff that they have. So again, check that out. They're a great resource. And then again, if you want to go ahead and email me, I will provide you with access to that NIST tool. It's free for folks that are here on the webinar today. And I think it's really great. We've looked for a long time. We thought about developing something ourselves. This is a tool that we're buying. And I think it's a great resource. And I've certainly gotten a lot of value out of it. So again, thanks for your attention today. I hope coming out of this, you will spend some time on reviewing, let's look at that laundry list of stuff and review your existing security controls. Do you have backups? Do you have antivirus? How's your patching? What's the plan for MFA? And see where you're at. Go ahead and get access to that survey tool. I think that'll help to formalize and maybe that'll be a resource to have that conversation with your organization's leadership. Where are we? Maybe you've got a bunch of things that are all in the needs attention, and that's a good way to help move that conversation along. And then schedule time with leadership. This is not something that can be done in a vacuum. Leadership has to say yes. And so whether you're whether you're on this session as an IT leader in your organization and you're kind of driving this from the bottom up, or whether you're maybe you're on the leadership side or a board side and you're going to drive this from top down, scheduling some time with leadership to have that conversation is going to be absolutely critical. Great. So thank you for your attention today. I hope I got to your questions. If I didn't, go ahead and chat them in. I'll stick around for a few minutes. The session is being recorded, and so the recording and the slides will be sent out to everybody who's on the webinar today. Did want to highlight, so next month, happy to be partnering with our friends over at TechSoup. So I did a digital security 101 and 201 course last year, and so I will be refreshing that, and there will be a live event that I'm going to be doing with TechSoup on October 17th. So sign up for that. I'll send that link out as well. And then I will also be doing a webinar for Community IT one day earlier on the 16th, where we'll talk a little bit about the tools. So again, 10 free tools, 3 things that you should pay for in terms of cybersecurity. So again, make sure to put that on your calendar, sign up, subscribe, and as the webinar ends, you'll get a feedback form. So again, please provide feedback. We really do review and read and update our content based on the feedback that we get. So thanks again for your attention. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions, please reach out. You can reach out to me through the Cybersecurity at Community IT email address. And I hope that this is helpful. Thanks and have a great day.
Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.